So we're going to talk about Romanticism in the American style, looking at literature from 1800 to 1860 in America. We're going to start with a quote from the wonderful Ralph Waldo Emerson where he says, "We will walk with our own feet. We will work with our own hands. We will speak our own minds." This is a nice unit that gets us kind of back to nature, back to basics, and back to emotions. So it's kind of nice to start off with something like that. Before we talk about what Romanticism is, we need to talk about what it's not. It is not sappy love stories. This is not a Nicholas Sparks situation. This is not love stuff. This is not what we're studying. We've kind of modernized that word and changed it. We're going to be looking at it from its original meaning. So, what is Romanticism? It's a name for the literary period that followed the Age of Reason, or the Revolutionary period in America, that was so heavily focused on logic and reason and government, and not really looking at people as individuals, but looking at the country as a whole, because that's what they needed to do at the time. But now that we're kind of together by 1800 and things are squaring away, we feel like now we can look at people differently, and we can use our imaginations, and we can focus a little less on reason. So once all the political matters kind of go away, that opens up the ability for us to focus on emotions, possibilities, and how we are not inhibited by anything but ourselves and our imaginations. So, what are the characteristics of American Romanticism? Well, it values feeling and intuition over reason. So, when you have a gut feeling that says, "Ooh, I don't like this, I'm not feeling this," they believe that's more important than you thinking, "Okay, well, let me think about it." That gut feeling that you have right away is absolutely more important to them. It places faith in inner experience and the power of imagination. So, what happens to you inside your own head and what you can imagine, that's what they believe in. It shuns the artificiality of civilization and seeks unspoiled nature, nature at its core. Nothing built upon it, nothing being torn down, nature as it was meant to be. It prefers youthful innocence to educated sophistication, so that wise someone who knows a lot is great, but they love the youth because they have all this energy and these endless possibilities, and they're innocent and pure. Champions individual freedom and the worth of the individual. Again, no longer looking at people as groups of people, but as individual people. And it contemplates nature's beauty as a path to spiritual and moral development. That you can look at nature's beauty and you can see God, or you can see something spiritual, and you can become a good person by going back to nature and living simply. It looks backward to the wisdom of the past, and it distrusts progress. It finds beauty and truth in exotic locals, in the supernatural realm, and the inner world of the imagination. Here's a sample of what a piece of American Romantic art would look like. It has this really beautiful coloration to it. It's kind of contrasting and both dull and bright at parts. It's got this kind of circle type cyclical nature with these beautiful mountains, and this just looks like a beautiful place to go. I feel like this is a place you could go and really get back to who you are. So that's what makes this such a great American Romantic piece. So, what kind of literature? Short stories, novels, poetry, and essays. Some of the factors that play a part in Romanticism and why it came about. You have the frontier. The country's still being developed, and there's so much land, and we just don't even know how much there is. It goes so far out. So there's this sense of limitless possibilities because we have this, what feels like limitless space. There's this great sense of optimism because we have this frontier and all this hope, whereas Europe is like, yeah, we got our borders figured out. I think we had this sense of anything could happen. Experimentation was happening in science and institutions, and then you're going to see it in the literature as well. We had a mingling of races, so we had immigrants in large numbers arriving to the US, helping with the diversification of the country. And we had the growth of industrialization, so a polarization of the North and South. The North and South officially becoming two different places, really. The North being, we're going to be industrialized, that's our thing. And the South saying, well, we're going to stay agrarian. We're going to continue to farm, that's our thing. So we have this kind of polarization of these places being so different. It talks about the quest for beauty and does not tell people how to live their lives. It gives wisdom, this sage advice, but it doesn't necessarily say, this is how you're supposed to live. Escapism from America's problems, anything that you're struggling with, they felt like this was a way to get away from that. to leave that problem for now. An interest in external nature for itself, for beauty. They believed nature was a source for the knowledge of the primitive. They felt nature was a refuge, and it was a revelation of God to the individual. And I like that because it's the idea of God to the individual, that you all have your own individual revelation and connection with God, and that can be done through nature. Romantic techniques used include the remoteness of settings in time and space, improbable plots, because if the possibilities are endless, why stick to the rules? You don't have to follow the laws of science anymore. You can do whatever you want. Inadequate or unlikely characterization, socially harmful morality or a world of lies. These things can exist. An organic principle in writing, that form rises out of content. It's not formal. It works with the material it's talking about. So the form can kind of be ambiguous in that way and change as the content does. Some of the representative writers, we have William Cullen Bryant and Oliver Wendell Holmes, and we'll address those this week. And then you have the Gothic Romantics. They're on their own kind of wavelength. So they're within Romanticism, but they're different. And that's going to be Nathaniel Hawthorne, Washington Irving, and the one and only Edgar Allan Poe, the most famous Gothic Romantic of all. So what's the big picture? Well, the Romantic view of man focuses on the individual and his inner world, his imaginations, his emotions. That's important. What's going on inside of you is important. Their view of nature is that nature is beautiful, it's mysterious, it's symbolic, and God can be seen in nature. He's there. The Romantic Guide to Truth says that your intuition and your inner voice or gut feeling and imagination are what guides you to your understanding, and that everyone's understanding can be different. And your 5 eyes of Romanticism are imagination, individuality, inspiration, idealism, and intuition. Idealism meaning whatever you want, whatever you think something can be, what's the best version of something you can think of, that can be real. Idealism. Very hard to have in this kind of world, and really nice to see at this time. Gothic Romanticism is just Romanticism, but darker. So it's that nature, but darker. So that's why a lot of Edgar Allan Poe's stories occur in settings that are dark or stormy. The outside reflects the inside, the content reflects the weather, and it's all connected. So it still focuses on nature. It focuses on the individual, but it does so in a way that's just a bit dark. So Edgar Allan Poe, Nathaniel Hawthorne, and Washington Irving were the Gothic Romantics, and they had a lot in common with the Transcendentalists, and we'll cover them next. But they explored the conflicts between good and evil, psychological effects of guilt and sin, and madness, and that was definitely Edgar Allan Poe for sure. And here they are in all their fabulous glory with their sweet collars. And so we'll get into Transcendentalism next, but that is what we're looking at for Romanticism and the Gothic Romantics.